In your intro, you kind of talked about, yeah, many HR leaders come in hoping to kind of be a helper, provide a great workplace. And sometimes that's not always the case, or they're not always able to do that. So can you explain some differences between, a traditional HR approach versus a trauma-informed HR approach?
Yeah, yeah. So there are six kind of key principles in trauma-informed care, and these are standard principles that can really be imagined through different lenses, just depending on the setting. So the first principle is safety. Then we have trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and cultural, historic, and gender issues. So within each of those principles, you can kind of see where you might be able to apply different principles to different things. And so when you're thinking about a traditional approach versus the trauma-informed HR approach, one of the examples that I love to give and that I really advocate for, and I think this is a place where HR people and organizations cause the most amount of harm. And I have been harmed in this process as well. And that is for involuntary terminations. And so within HR and organizations, oftentimes we have to involuntarily terminate people. Unfortunately, we don't like doing it, but it has to be done. There are a couple reasons that happens, right? And we have the one reason that everybody sort of thinks of when they think about this stuff, which is gross negligence. It's like somebody really messed up. That's a very small percentage of people that actually do that, right? The most of the time, the people that are getting terminated are people that just like aren't quite the right fit. Maybe they were on a PIP, or they just had some performance issues that they hadn't quite worked through. There's a whole lot of reasons, or maybe it's a reduction of force. Maybe there are larger layoffs that are going on. But we tend to handle all those situations the exact same way, right? Which is where we're sitting down in the meeting and we're saying, hey, I'm so sorry to tell you, but this is your last day here. And essentially ending with all of your stuff is cut off and we'll see you later. And that's the end of it, right? And I kind of joke when I coach employees or managers about terminations, and I say, for the most part, you will be surprised that most people take it really well, except the one time that I didn't. And I tell them the story about when my position was eliminated, where I worked, and it caused a lot of trauma and a lot of harm because of the way that they did it, and because of the words that they used and the way that they positioned the reasoning around it. And so I really want us to be really intentional about that, because even though it's never going to be something that feels good, there's ways that we can do it to make it not feel bad or not feel harmful, right? It's never going to feel good again. But so one of the big things that I advocate for, and I think this kind of highlights a key difference between traditional HR versus trauma-informed HR, and that is giving employees a sense of empowerment, voice, and choice when it comes to the termination process. Also employing some of those things around trustworthiness and transparency and peer support. So the example is, instead of saying that, hey, we're terminating you, this is your last day, we say, hey, we let them know what's going on and say, you can choose for today to be your last day. And I've advocated for this to happen usually in the beginning of the week. So we're talking like a Monday or Tuesday. And if you can even think about even a little further, maybe you're getting close to the end of the month. And if you just decide to push that effective date a couple days in the future, you give that employee health insurance through the end of that month, right? Mm-hmm. And so just thinking about little ways of how can we make this a softer landing for this person, right? And that's where you're going to think about severance, you're going to think about COBRA payments. Regardless if you can do any of that, the least you can do is not pull the rug from under them and also cut everything off, because really there's no need to do that. And I think that a lot of us sort of have in our risk assessment brains this kind of Murphy's Law that if it can happen, it will happen. But I just don't think that's the case, right? And so giving people the ability to say, hey, we're going to leave your Slack on. We're going to leave your email open. You are welcome to do what you need to do to transition your work, to reach out to any external partners, to reschedule meetings or cancel meetings. and to communicate to your coworkers about what's going on. We will leave the communication up to you. We will leave the choice up to you of whether or not you want today to be your last day or sometime else this week. And give them that trustworthiness, right? To say, we trust you. We know that you're not going to do anything like that we wouldn't want you to do, right? Because we understand that what we're doing is really difficult, and we have a lot of compassion for that. And so we want to make this as easy and as soft of a landing as possible. And so, I think that kind of gesture just goes a long way. And I think that it makes people who are participating in that process from all sides feel a little bit better, because you're being very kind and compassionate about something that is just going to be very difficult no matter how you slice it, right? And so that's something that I've really been advocating for. And again, it takes a lot of trust, right? It takes a lot of kind of convincing people, like, no, this is okay, I promise. And also like keeping an eye on things, right? Like, they don't have to be in all of the systems, right? If there are systems that are really risky for them to be in, turn it off. But if your entire operations rests on the fact that one employee who may just be disgruntled can take the whole thing down, maybe you should also look at, just some of the things around how your organization is being managed if you're that concerned about that risk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I like that you pointed that out. That was actually something in a really early podcast episode we talked about regarding kind of handling reductions in a respectful way. And that was one of the points, is like, allow people to say goodbye. These are people they've worked with, and the risk is very minimal, right? And yeah, like you said, you can take away some systems, but you don't have to just cut people off, that second, right? So it's just such a kind thing to do. And I love the tip about, or, the point about like, can you help them with a softer landing, about, moving it to the beginning of, the next month or something like that. So they have a little bit of time with health insurance and things like that.